Welcome to the weekly news highlights. I'm Shin Ye-eun, here to recap the top stories at Arirang this week. North Korea launched its fifth intercontinental ballistic missile of this year. Its state media claims the launch showed what option Kim Jong-un would take if Washington makes a wrong decision, as the missile seemingly has the potential to reach U.S. mainland. In response, Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo activated their missile warning data sharing system. The three nations also agreed upon a multi-year exercise plan starting next year for regular military drills. The National Assembly has finalized next year's national budget. The bill was passed more than 2 weeks after its scheduled deadline. The final package came down to $503 billion, which was down by more than $230 million from the government's initial proposal submitted in September. This is the second year the budget was decreased by the parliament. South Korea's Supreme Court yet again upheld two lower court rulings that ordered Japanese firms to compensate Koreans forced into wartime labor. This comes some 10 years after the suits were filed. South Korea is bolstering cooperation with its key allies, the U.S. and Japan, as North Korea launched its fifth ICBM this year. The three countries have since decided to activate a data sharing system where they would warn each other about North Korea's ongoing missile threats. Sharing data on this matter had been limited to only during exercises, but now warning information can be shared around the clock. The three nations also agreed upon a multi-year exercise plan starting next year. Our defense correspondent Kim Jong-un with the story.
South Korea, the U.S., and Japan on Tuesday launched a warning information sharing system for North Korean missiles. The Defense Ministry said the system has been established to detect and evaluate missiles launched in real time so that they could ensure the safety of citizens and improve related capabilities.
We expect that today's achievements will further enhance a new era of trilateral security cooperation. The three countries will continue to strengthen trilateral cooperation to ensure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region, including on the Korean Peninsula and beyond.
The three countries are now able to share data on a missile's presumed launch site, flight path, and landing site. On top of that, warning data is now shared around the clock. Previously, data sharing on North Korean missiles had been limited to during exercises.
Information used to be shared temporarily and partially during general training. But now, South Korea, the U.S., and Japan operate a new system that allows them to share North Korea's missile warning information 24 hours a day.
The Defense Ministry and experts say that the sharing system will further strengthen the military's response posture and capabilities by allowing South Korea to quickly obtain more accurate information.
It is meaningful that the American early warning satellites can detect stress in advance within 7 to 9 seconds after liftoff. It takes 3 to 6 minutes for a missile attack from North Korea to South Korea. However, if it is detected within 7 to 9 seconds, it can be intercepted more quickly and accurately.
Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo have also approved a multi-year exercise plan. Starting next year, they will regularize military drills and carry out exercises in line with growing provocations from Pyongyang. The leaders of the three countries had decided to establish a multi-year exercise plan at the Camp David summit in August and agreed upon the need for the warning data sharing system at a trilateral summit held in November last year. Kim Jong-un, Arirang
President Yoon Suk-yeol sent a message in regards to North Korea's latest ICBM launch. In a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Yoon warned that Pyongyang's provocations would only inflict more pain on the regime itself. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
A firm message by President Yoon Suk-yeol to North Korea on Tuesday following its launching of intercontinental and short-range ballistic missiles in the past 2 days.
북한 정권은 자신들의 이러한 도발이 오히려 스스로에게 더 큰 고통으로 돌아올 것이라는 것을 깨닫게 될 것입니다.
The comment came as he opened a cabinet meeting where he also said that North's actions were a significant and serious challenge to the security of the Korean Peninsula and the world. He also said the launch provided an opportunity to check if the sharing of real-time missile warning data between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan works. This was set up back in November 2022 when the leaders of the three countries met in Phnom Penh. In addition, he said with the Nuclear Consultative Group meeting last week in Washington, the construction of a unified extended deterrence system between South Korea and the U.S. has come within reach. This, it says, signifies the materialization of a strong nuclear-based ROK-US alliance.
정부는 북핵 위협에 대해 국민들께서 아무 걱정 없이 편안하게 지내실 수 있도록 경제 사회 활동을 원활하게 하실 수 있도록 확실하게 뒷받침하겠습니다.
He also took time to look back into his state visit to the Netherlands last week. He cited the new, quote, chip alliance with the Netherlands as the Dutch chip-making equipment company ASML holds key technology for semiconductor production. Just for semiconductor cooperation, the two countries signed 6 MOUs.
President Yoon told the cabinet that the chip alliance implies sharing sensitive information and technology and jointly nurturing talent. The Netherlands recognizes us as a semiconductor ally, and both domestically and globally, attention is being paid to the semiconductor alliance between our two countries.
But he said cooperation isn't limited to this industry and that bilateral cooperation will be deepened in clean energy, science, and agriculture. In the meantime, he also urged the relevant ministries to follow up on the newly passed Supply Chain Stabilization Act. He said to thoroughly prepare for the prompt operation of the early warning system and supply chain risk management system as per the new law. He added that the weaponization of resources and fragmentation of supply chains represent the biggest challenges faced by the global economy. Kim Do-yeon, 아리랑뉴스.
Foreign ministers representing the Group of Seven also condemned North Korea's, quote, repeated reckless actions and called for a prompt and powerful global response led by the UN Security Council. Despite these calls, the Council's meeting on Tuesday came to a close with no consensus amid opposition from China and Russia. Shin Ye-eun reports.
The UN Security Council meeting was held in New York on Tuesday to address North Korea's evolving military threats, but ended without a concrete outcome. The meeting was convened following Pyongyang's test firing of its most advanced ICBM missile on Monday, which has the potential to reach the U.S. During the meeting, a senior UN official for political affairs, Khaled Kiari, strongly criticized Pyongyang's continuing provocations.
Any launch by the DPRK using ballistic missile technology is a violation of relevant Security Council resolution.
North Korea, however, dismissed the criticism, saying it is exercising its sovereign right as recognized by international law. Tuesday's UNSC meeting ended without any tangible results, but South Korea, the U.S., and 8 other countries released a joint statement before the meeting, which called on the North to abandon its unlawful missile programs. G7 ministers also issued a joint statement on Tuesday, condemning Pyongyang's latest launch of ICBM in, quote, the strongest terms. It also urged the international community to take firm and unified action against North Korea's, quote, reckless nuclear and missile threats. The statement also criticized Pyongyang for arms transfers to Moscow and urged for a halt to such activities and for North Korea to abide by relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Meanwhile, U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller on Tuesday spoke of a shift in the country's North Korean policy while reaffirming full commitment to its 2 Asian allies.
We have tried to make it a policy of never not reacting to every provocative statement that he makes. And our commitments to the defense of the Republic of Korea and Japan remain ironclad.
Miller, however, said the U.S. has no hostile intent towards the North and called on the regime to engage in dialogue. Shin Ye-eun, 아리랑뉴스.
Amid flared geopolitical tensions, President Yoon has nominated a new foreign minister named Cho Tae-yeol. Since his nomination earlier this week, Cho has highlighted the importance of Seoul's ties with both Washington and Beijing. Cho shared his commitment to seeking ways to promote a peaceful and productive partnership with China. He further pledged to pursue appropriate diplomatic policies, keeping in mind the current geopolitical standoff between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington on one side, and Beijing, Pyongyang, and Moscow on the other. As part of efforts to bolster bilateral cooperation, Seoul and Beijing are looking to activate a hotline to better manage matters related to supply chains. According to South Korea's industry ministry, working level talks to this end were held here in Seoul. Among the issues addressed were those related to supplies of urea, as China recently suspended its exports of this compound, which is used to reduce carbon emissions in diesel vehicles like trucks. Lawmakers in South Korea have finally approved the national budget for next year. The approval outlines key allocations and priorities for the next year's fiscal year. For more on this, we have our National Assembly correspondent Lee Shu joining me in the studio. Welcome, Shu.
Hi, Yeun.
All right, Shu, let me ask you the first question. What exactly is the national budget for the 2024 fiscal year?
Right, so the national budget is at 656.6 trillion Korean won, around 503.3 billion US dollars, and this is a decrease of around $230 million from the government's initial proposal submitted back in September. It passed with 237 votes to 9 with 13 abstentions. Now, this marks the second consecutive year where the government proposed budget has been reduced during the parliamentary review process. Compared to last year, the total budget increased by 2.8%.
I see, but it took quite some time for the National Assembly to approve this budget. Why is that so?
Right, so there were extensive deliberations leading up to the approval that passed 19 days past its legal deadline of December 2nd. This is because the ruling and opposition parties couldn't agree on the specifics of the budget. For example, the ruling People Power Party, with its goals of making the government more financially sound, wanted to cut the R&D budgets, while the main opposition Democratic Party called for a drastic increase. The DP called for an increase in other areas, including the budget related to the Saemangeum tidal flat in Jeollabuk-do province, while the PPP was against it. This is as the ruling party thought the province should be held accountable for shortcomings experienced during its hosting of the World Scout Jamboree in August.
Then what happened to those budgets? In which areas did we see an increase?
So compared to the initial proposal, the Assembly actually increased the budget for R&D by 600 billion Korean won, or around 462 million US dollars. The budget can be used for supporting next-generation technologies and for equipping labs with high-tech infrastructure. The budget for development around the Saemangeum tidal flat also increased by 300 billion Korean won, around 231 million US dollars. A substantial amount has also been allocated to help those in need. For example, for temporary rent support for young people, as well as energy bill support for small business owners. The National Assembly also increased the budget for increasing the number of carriages for certain subway lines to help improve people's daily commute. In defense, 242 billion Korean won, or around 187 million US dollars, has been set aside to build fighter aircraft such as the KF-21.
Then which areas did we see a decrease in?
Well, the reserve fund for the finance ministry was cut by around $600 million, and the budget for the overseas official development assistance was cut by around $150 million. The budget for building next-generation fighter jets was cut by around $175 million. Now, Chu Kyung-ho, the deputy prime minister and also the minister of finance, said that the country needs to invest in its people and prepare for the future. Listen in.
No matter how difficult the financial situation, we cannot neglect to invest in what the state has to do, such as protecting the weak, preparing for the future, and public safety. The necessary funds were procured by restructuring fiscal expenditures, not through an easy means such as increasing the national debt.
And this is the first budget approval for the Yoon Suk-yeol administration, so I'm curious as to how the presidential office reacted.
Well, President Yoon Suk-yeol himself has called for a swift approval of the budget and for it to be approved in the parliament's extraordinary session in December. Following the approval, a presidential office spokesperson at a briefing welcomed the passing.
Although it's late, I think it is fortunate that the budget bill passed the National Assembly under the agreement of the ruling and opposition parties. Next year's budget plan maintained a sound fiscal stance in compliance with the principle of increase within reduction during the National Assembly deliberation process. It's greatly increased the livelihood economy and support projects for the vulnerable, including small business owners, farmers, young people, and the disabled.
The top office vowed that the government will make every effort so that the budget can be executed from the beginning of the year.
All right, so we'll have to keep a close eye on whether everything goes as planned. Thanks so much for the update, Shihu.
Thank you.
South Korea's top court on Thursday upheld rulings ordering Japanese companies Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Nippon Steel to compensate the Korean victims of wartime forced labor. This comes some 10 years after these suits were initially filed. Kim Jong-un with the details.
South Korea's Supreme Court has once again ruled in favor of Korean victims of forced labor during Japan's colonial rule between 1910 to 1945. The top court on Thursday upheld rulings that ordered 2 Japanese firms to compensate the victims. Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Nippon Steel are ordered to pay a maximum of 150 million won, or around $115,000 to each victim. Combined with extra damages for the delay, they are ordered to pay around $900,000 in total. A total of 11 plaintiffs won the ruling, 4 against Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and 7 against Nippon Steel. However, all the plaintiffs have died of old age since the lawsuit was first filed 9 years ago. Thursday's rulings were the first such outcomes by the top court since 2018. Back then, the South Korean court made landmark rulings on separate forced labor cases, ordering the 2 Japanese companies to compensate other former Korean victims. The 2018 ruling soured relations between South Korea and Japan, as Tokyo argued that related issues were completely settled under a 1965 bilateral agreement. Japan's reaction is not much different this time around.
These rulings are in clear violation of Article 2 of the Japan-Korea Claims Agreement and are extremely regrettable and absolutely unacceptable. We have protested this matter to South Korea.
As the defendants Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Nippon Steel are likely to continue refusing to pay the compensation, the government is expected to compensate the victims using funds procured through a public foundation. The plan was announced earlier this year to improve relations with Japan.
In line with the government's compensation plan announced in March, we plan to pay the compensation and damages for delay through the Foundation of Victims of Forced Mobilization by Imperial Japan.
With such a plan already in place and taking into account Japan's continued denial, it's unlikely that the Japanese firms will pay the compensation themselves. The Japanese companies have yet to pay the previously ordered compensation, claiming the statute of limitations has passed. But for the very first time, the court on Thursday clarified that this would not be allowed. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Against this backdrop, Seoul and Tokyo revived a long-stalled economic dialogue with a focus on supply chain and technology cooperation. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji with more.
For the first time in 8 years, the foreign ministries of South Korea and Japan held high-level economic talks. They took place at South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Thursday afternoon, led by the Deputy Foreign Minister for Economic Affairs, Kang Jae-kwon, and Japan's Senior Deputy Foreign Minister, Keiichi Ono. The two sides are likely to have discussed issues on economic security, such as supply chain and technology cooperation. Eyes are on whether the discussion extended to the lawsuit filed against Japanese companies by Korean wartime forced labor victims, or South Korea's import ban on Japanese seafood originating from Fukushima. This is the 15th time that the two countries have held economic dialogue after it was first launched in 1999 to discuss comprehensive economic cooperation. It was last held in January 2016 in Tokyo. The Japanese government postponed the meeting in late 2016 when a statue of a girl symbolizing Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery was built in front of the Japanese consulate in South Korea's port city of Busan. The meeting remained suspended as bilateral relations between Seoul and Tokyo worsened over several issues stemming from Japan's colonial rule of Korea before and during World War II. Then bilateral relations started to improve starting March this year, after South Korea announced its plan to compensate victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. And the leaders of the two countries agreed in July to resume the high-level economic dialogue by the end of this year. The Foreign Ministry expressed hope of further improvements in bilateral relations, saying the talks could become an opportunity for the two countries to move toward a future-oriented relationship. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Over in China, at least 127 people have been killed in the northwest region of Gansu province after the country saw its deadliest earthquake in years. A 6.2 magnitude earthquake hit Gansu around midnight on Monday, killing at least 127 and injuring more than 700 people. Thousands of residents had to flee as their homes were reduced to rubble. Gansu is located just between the Tibetan and List plateaus and borders Mongolia. This remote region is one of China's poorest, with poor building quality, which also attributed to widespread damage. As the world is shifting towards accepting and better protecting the rights of sexual minorities, even conservative groups like the Catholic Church have become more open. The Vatican on Monday made a landmark ruling to allow Catholic priests to administer blessings to same-sex couples as long as they're not part of a regular church ritual or liturgy. But it's not a complete win for same-sex couples, as the Vatican made clear that the latest blessing won't be given in ritual ceremonies. This includes the sacrament of marriage, mass, or civil union. The church maintained its long-standing stance on marriage, claiming that this ritual should exclusively be done between a man and a woman. If you don't have any plans yet to enjoy the Christmas weekend, why don't you try visiting Gwanghwamun Square here in Seoul? The annual Seoul Winter Festa has kicked off there, and a string of festivities are taking place, marking the end of this year. Choi Soo-young visited herself.
A lightning ceremony is brightening up the winter nights in downtown Seoul. Gwanghwamun Square is illuminated with lights for Christmas and New Year. The 15th Seoul Winter Festa opened on Friday, December 15th. Sculptures such as the Blue Dragon, representing the coming year, and the turtle ship of Korean Admiral Lee Sun-shin fill the square. The media art exhibition Seoul Light, which colored Dongdaemun Digital Plaza last fall, is being shown onto Gyeongbokgung Palace's walls. A Christmas market, inspired by Europe, has also been set up. With 83 booths, nearly twice as many as last year, you can enjoy traditional Korean craft items, products, and street food.
I think it's pretty similar. Usually they're, especially in northern Italy, they're a bit bigger maybe, and they sell local products and lots of artisanal things. But I guess like the vibe is the same with Christmas lights and wooden cabins. Similar.
That's right. Maybe in Italy there's more food oriented. Yeah, because the food is really big in Italy, big thing. So here, but I can see a lot of artisan things too. So it's kind of similar. Like it's good vibe, and Christmas vibe is really nice.
The nearby Cheonggyecheon stream also sparkles brightly with the theme of White Night in Seoul.
I came for a trip and suddenly found a beautiful place. I felt really happy, and the Christmas vibes make it even better. There are lots of things here that people seem to enjoy, and I like.
The highlight of the Seoul Winter Festa is the countdown event on the last day of the year. This year, simultaneous events will take place at Posinggak Pavilion, Gwanghwamun Square, and Dongdaemun Design Plaza for people from around the world to enjoy together. The festa will run until January 21st.
Seoul City plans to make Gwanghwamun Square a world-famous countdown spot like New York's Times Square or the Sydney Opera House. Choi Soo-young, Arirang
That's what happened around the world this week. We'll bring you more updates on Monday.